right, guys. Hello, welcome. This is the first solo episode that I have on Reflections with Val, and I want to welcome all of you guys who have been listening from the first episode, who probably just picked this up and started listening to it right now. But regardless of the point, you listened, you took some time in, and I want to thank you guys. So for those who don't know what Reflections with Val is a podcast where I interview one-on-one people of different backgrounds, different crafts, different creatives around the world, whether you be a singer, whether you be an artiste who draws, or a rapper, or a poet. I want to be able to express your journey and what you've gone through in your life, your trials, your tribulations, put your craft and your life together, and what made that creation, what made that first piece. And so I wanted to create a platform where vulnerability was okay, vulnerability was open and acceptable, and where other people could learn from other people's lives. And why not a better way for creatives to also be included in that? Because I feel like a lot of us are misunderstood. We are misfits in the middle of normality. Like, there's a lot of us with different hats and different ideas that people may look at us like, oh, I don't know, man. And it ends up being something great, and we end up making something that's beautiful to us, that speaks to our individuality. And I think there's something beautiful about that. So why not present to you guys a place where you can listen to those stories come to life and how music has touched them. So now this right here, this one-on-one thing that I'm doing right now, what I'm trying to do with this is basically share you guys a little something that I'm not able to share in the one-on-one interviews that I have on Reflections. This is going to be more intimate, more personal, more for you guys to keep on track on what I'm doing with my shows, or what I got going singing, what I got going potting, what has been in my personal life, because I'm not just Val, There's something more behind Val, and I think it's important that you guys know the journey and the reason why I even started Reflections in the first place, because it's not just coming from, oh, it's a trend and everyone's doing podcasting, so let me do podcasts too. And it's like, no, it's not coming from that place. I kind of always been intrigued with radio, so it's kind of like I would listen to the radio all the time while my mom would pick us up and do whatever, and I would always listen to the people talking. I'd be like, I wonder how to get a job like that. Like, just talk on music, talk on life. Like, that must be so much fun. And I would be like 8 years old thinking that in my head, and things of that nature. And then look at me now, I'm doing the same thing. So that's pretty cool. Whatever, I'll go with it. But so going into the one individuality and why I'm doing this episode to begin with is to just start telling you guys what's been going on through my week. And let me just start with that. Like, man, this week has been pretty interesting. The past couple weeks have been interesting. I have been able to still continue to do interviews. I have been able to still take people in through Reflections, and I have been able to reach out to other creatives in this moment to see if they're able to do other interviews with me or set appointments with me for the future. But however, right now, as of date, it is April 18th, 2020. We are still in a pandemic situation, which means that pretty much everything is on lockdown. And it's just been a crazy couple of weeks. It's been trying for the most of us, for majority of us, for the most part. I have witnessed people that I grew up with in my family that has known me for 15, 10 years, lost family members through this. I have seen cousins who've lost friends. I had seen so many people next to me that has lost someone, and I feel like everyone should be coming out of this pandemic pretty much in a different mindset and awakened in a different way. And that's just all I pray for from everyone in this situation, because there's nothing that we can do to control it or to stop it. It is what it is. It's a pandemic. So the only thing that we can do is just treat it the best way we know how, and that is have our mental stable in a good, positive state, right? And, there's many different ways that we can go about, and that's what I wanted to talk about on this episode. I learned this out of it, and I gained this experience out of it, but how can I move forward? Let's talk about how can I get past this little hurdle. And if I have to learn something, and if I have to take away something and sacrifice a piece of myself that I'm comfortable in, then let me do so, because I want what's best for myself. If I don't want to be that minority statistic that I was brought up in a single parent home with my mom and not a lot of us graduated college, then me doing absolutely nothing is going to prove that point right. But if I work my ass off and I'm a minority and I'm deciding to work 3 jobs full time at 18 years old to get by, and I'm making sure that I get my career and I get my diploma, now we talking actions. Now we're not living by that. Now we're not living by that statistic, and now you're not. Some of us force ourselves to believe what we're conditioned to in our lives. So I just want to restate that. Like, some of us are forced to believe the things that we were conditioned to in life. Like, that right there is important, because what we're conditioned to doesn't necessarily mean that's who we are as a person. And I think I mentioned this in one of the most recent episodes that I recorded, and I think forgot. I think it was episode 8. No, I'm gonna say it was Misfits episode, but we were talking on that, and I was saying that. Oh no, Zane's episode. Oh girl, I don't even know why I said that. Zane, don't kill me. But yeah, Zane. Yes, what we're conditioned is what our parents' characteristics are, and what what our grandparents' characteristics are. We're sent down from gen to gen, so those are our conditions. Like, we were conditioned and we were raised in that environment, but that doesn't necessarily mean I will be that way. So, for example, if I am a man and I grew up without a father, now I am a father of 2 or 3 or 4 kids, whatever the case is, you are a father. But you never properly had a male figure in your life, and you were conditioned to believe that you will now do the same act that your father did because he abandoned you. You had no instruction, so now you are bound to do the same. But that is a conditioning thought. That is not one that you're completely rid of. That is not one that you're free of. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. That doesn't necessarily mean you will end up like that person. And I say that because, as a person who was brought up without a father and someone who wasn't really there, I can see how that kind of affected my older brother. It affected my older brother more than it affected me and my sister, not having a father figure. So, now as he's a grown-ass man, I can see why, like, it was such an important thing for him to have that in his life, because there were things that a father by his son's side can teach that maybe he was confused about, and right then and there it was redirected and it was corrected. But because he didn't have the father, you know what I'm saying? There's things of that nature, but you can't go on carrying around that like, now you are going to be that way. Now it's bound that you're going to end up doing the same mistakes that your father had committed. And it's like, that's not the case. You force yourself to believe that you will do that. It's like a girl saying, I have my issue with my baby daddy, or the same. I know some friends and some females who are still in a situation with their baby daddies because of their daddy issues, okay? So that's just an example right there. That's an example right there. And this is what I mean about us being in these lockdown situations, that it's perfect for us to just go back and self-reflect in our moments and identify the difference between the two, which is what you were brought up in, your conditions, what you conditioned yourself to believe versus who you truly are, what you carried, your traits, your personalities as a kid, what made you individually, what made you you. And that is who you are, not your conditioned. Like, a conditioning trait could be internalizing your emotions constantly. That is a conditioning trait. A conditioning trait is constantly, every single time you leave a relationship, constantly going to the next. That's a form of conditioning. A form of conditioning can be when I am upset and I have an eating disorder. When I eat, it makes me happy, so I'm going to go back to eating. That's a conditioning disorder because maybe your parents did that, So I can't really blame you if you're going in the middle of the night, going to the refrigerator and getting your food, your comfort food, because right now that's the only thing that's making you happy when you eat and you get full. But that is a form of conditioning that you have to now acknowledge for the first step. And after you acknowledge it, you're able to continue to the next step. Only after you acknowledge it for what it is. Some of us, what we like to do, we like to acknowledge it for what it is, see it, observe it, and then run away as soon as we get close to getting rid of it. And that's because that's the place that we've known. That it's a comfort place. And the only person that's going to be ready to change that place, to get up and reconfigure that, is yourself, not your partner, not your mom, not your sister, not your best friend who happens to be a believer, not your parents who have been praying for you since like 10 years old, even though you haven't gone to church a day in your life. It's going to be through you. And I'm not sponsoring Dunkin' Donuts. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm so not sponsoring it. I just want to take a little drink of coffee. It's not any of that nature. And I tell people, one of my friends asked me, how do you know if it's conditioning or if it's not? Okay. Write down, break down in a graph, the cons and the pros. Write down what you liked about your life growing up and what you didn't like about your life growing up. What you liked about your parents, growing up. What did you notice? What didn't you notice about your parents growing up? And then through that, you'll find some roots that you didn't think were there. Through that, you'll find some acknowledgments that needed to be done by reflecting back. Things that needed to be said to yourself. Like, there's some people that I know, and even in my psychologist said this to me when I went to therapy. She even said, looking at yourself in the mirror and just having that conversation with yourself and being like, yo, it's good. Like, it's gonna be a good morning. Like things of that nature. Even though you don't believe that it's gonna be a good morning, it doesn't matter as long as you woke up and you acknowledge that today's going to be a good morning, as to opposed to you waking up and acknowledging all of your stresses, all of the things that you cannot control. Focus on the things you can control. That is the same thing that Stoicism teaches us as well, is like, don't focus on the things you can't control. Like, if it's stressful, cool. It's going to be stressful always. It's going to be stressful tomorrow. It's going to be stressful within a week. If you put energy into it or not, it's still going to be there. So why put even energy to begin with? Focus on the things that you like and the energies you can control in the midst of that, and then that wouldn't really take over your life or your thoughts that way. So it's just a matter of controlling. And I think now, being that we're in quarantine, it's harder for us to control our thoughts. It's hard. The mental health is definitely a concerning thing for me, because a lot of us who had jobs, Congress, we're talking almost everybody got shut down. So a lot of us who are used to always being preoccupied and saving our mess for later and just piling it up with work, we're now forced to face these things now head on. So I just inquire you guys to take advantage of these moments and to not push that aside anymore. Don't push it because it's easier, because we don't have that much time. We don't know if that friend that you had a quarrel with is going to be alive by next month, for crying out loud. Are you going to wait till that person is completely gone and no longer living for you to say, you know what, I was sorry. I hope you can take it all. I'm too good for you. I'm way too good for you.